Bum bum bum. Well, hello. I have to cut this because it's too long. Wait a second. That was explaining why last video was chopped. So we need an intro. Welcome to the clouds. I mean, we had the same thing happen. I got my game. I have my cape. My beautiful cape flies in the wind. Kaomi here, and we're reading chapter 2 of the future. Retina. Voila. So let's get into it. Yeah. What just happened? Well, the girl squashed the bear's paw, and now she is probably fleeing for her life because the parents have seen that she has squashed their little baby bear's paw. So let's get into the rest of the chapter. Which she had so accidentally squished with her shoes of glory. Any emotion that the 11-year-old had had in her life could be doubled, tripled, or added on an elephant-sized spoonful of ice cream, and yet not level up to the amount of doubt and fear that filled her mind that very moment. The simplest thing to calm a worried mother is knowledge of her safe child, not through nearby strangers that could very well rid of this safety. If the latter did occur, dire consequences were sure to follow, and Canada seemed the villain in the comic. With many a fear in her eyes, Canada ran faster than her growing legs were built to take her, and surrounded by tall pines, decided to climb higher than she should have. With a drum in her chest, Canada expected her end to come. Bears could quite easily climb trees, better than any human could. She was safer then. In seconds, the bear would come equal level with her, and only a paw's slash would greet her. Other options, however, did not seem present, and therefore she chose the tree path, soon doubting its reliability. Soon the young cub, no longer in painful sound, arose from his sitting position and began to gallop toward the very tree that the girl climbed. Meanwhile, the mother bear, Canada assumed she was, continued her charge full speed ahead. But with a small call from the youngster, child to mother, this charge ceased, and everything seemed to halt. Canada, unaware of the event's meaning, leaned forward in her branch and regarded the scene with much scrutiny as the mother bear loosened her jaws and restrained her claws. Then, as an authentic bear hug was passed from mother to child, it seemed the cub had calmed her for the time. But soon the mother roused again toward the tree that Canada resided on. Canada knew something was up, and it was not just the sky nor herself. It's like trying to hold up my face with a finger. Like you hold your face up with your knuckle, you hold it up with a finger. Poor finger. Canada knew something was up, and it was not just the sky nor herself. Her worries grew as the mother mounted the base of the tree, but with eyes of warmth not seen prior. It seemed the cub had calmed her for the time, but soon the mother aroused again toward the tree that Canada resided on. The mother bear looked up at her from the base of the tree, and gave her warm eyes which were not seen prior, and something of a smile? Or perhaps she was baring her teeth as a dog would. To finish the show, the mother bear raised one of her 2 front paws from the pine's body and gave a sway of her hand, leaning against the pine tree, and she gave a sway of her hand. Human-like wave it was. How is it that this bear could do what history proved no bear could perform naturally shocked Canada. The next move, a less surprising one, began as the mother bear slowly made its way up the tree trunk, one paw upward from the other, but with stealth, as if climbs like that were a much common habit. Of course, a kind girl like Canada would have no intention to be rude to such a special species of bear, and immediately slid on over to the tree trunk to create space for the upcoming bear. If she did want to sit down, would that be adequate kindness? Canada could only anticipate so. As the bear finally arrived to the gifted spot, a strange sound was produced through the hollow under its nose. The words the mother bear spoke as she immediately struck out a paw. Nice to meet you, human. With their distance, Canada could smell the black bear's blackberry breath, with a hint of garlic. Perhaps that explained why pictures never featured flies or mosquitoes swarming about the creatures, although she was not sure where a bear could get the bulb of spice from within the forest. But another task within these certain conditions was easily uncertain, being at such a height only to grasp to the tree's bark. So Canada gestured forth her own kinder hand a form of peace treaty that usually worked with humans. A soft paw was felt, along with friction paw pads, whose feel could be mistaken for shaped sponges. A balmy welcome. Considering its floppy cheeks pulled back into a tight smile, Canada assumed some satisfaction had been passed. Her own smile was forced, though, and she still felt queasy with the other's presence. Soon was still the moment which passed as a conveyor belt running its course, but left overnight. Because I'm a worry flurry, I want to charge said recording device. Because I don't know. What happens if I die? Not I die, this thing dies. If this thing dies, I would have lost an hour of this. A balmy welcoming, considering its floppy cheeks pulled back into a tight smile. Canada assumed some satisfaction had been passed. Her own smile was forced, though, and she felt quite queasy, and she still felt queasy within the other's presence. Soon was still the moment which passed as a conveyor belt running its course, but left overnight by the faculty of shoemakers, up and down motion of hand and paw, the exchanging of smiles. Smile back at me. Came their own rhythmatic patterns. The faculty needed to flatline it. If this handshake was compared to a customary one where person-to-person shakes for greeting but simply moves on after twice as long as it took to begin the greeting, the warm feeling within Canada would have never occurred. Both it was embarrassment and the warmth of another friendly soul. So the girl was unsure of how to let the event affect her. With her already befuddled soul, regardless, releasing the moment became more than a mental challenge to drop. The bear was the one, indeed, who concluded what Canada could not quite grasp, and it slowly separated the two greeting palms and withdrew her own. A confused look from the same was established. Canada was just, I'm shaking the hand of a bear. Okay, I'm not really thinking much about the hand or when I'm gonna let go, because this is not a normal handshake. Dear me, I'm quite sorry, Canada said, embarrassed with the first improper greeting toward her new acquaintance, clasping her hands together in distress and hugging them to her chest. She feared the wrong impression, as if toward another student from her school. However, bears do not quickly judge, and the one simply commenced a quick shuffle back, then paw under paw advanced down the tree's bark. Canada could hear its claws scratch the tough bark like the school's chalkboard. Then, once it was factual that the mother was on solid ground, a welcoming wave was passed upward, and Canada assumed her before embarrassed gesture was simply well behind them all. She loved how animals work. A judgment never would last longer than a second before nature's instincts kicked in. Climbing trees. Is it fun? Is it freedom for the bear? What is it? Glancing down at the small but furry figures below, the girl expressed the most honest face of shock, and she was not sure where to start or orally express. None had lived such an experience of being waved by a bear who could too smile. Her muscles were robotic, and the greeting was accidentally ignored, but Canada did not realize it, for everything of her lay frozen. Out of the purple, a small nut of a seed flew from the heavens with such force that immediately brought sense to the world. Canada's mind could not formulate a duck in heaven's fast timing, though, and the unborn plant, the seed is an unborn plant, hit its first obstacle, none other than centrally square between both of Canada's eyes. Pow, acorn, the midst of her mighty forehead of no acne. Ow! Why, with that force, I could have knocked from the tree to the pits below, Canada exclaimed in the later action of the blow, giving a good massage to the impacted feature. The acorn, however, did more than cause the single tinge of pain down her nerves. It awoke her from the dreary state she had been clogged in, and her limbs were once more able to flimps loosely. What creature could have caused such commotion, seemingly from the heavens above? Well, the heavens did not have the best access to acorns, therefore, perhaps not the culprit. Looking around, Canada could only identify a single source that could confirm the motive. The only one mammal directly, a branch upward, and in the midst of her forehead, a pesky squirrel it was. Right above her, on a tree branch, there was a squirrel. He, too, had a bunch full of acorns in one paw, and in launch position before he noticed his location had been spotted. I've been spotted. I am the criminal. I'll throw acorns at you, and you, and you. Well, the Canada had no clue to the squirrel's appearance. The rodent had plenty aware of Canada, as he had followed her upon her departure from the vehicle. Well, yes, indeed, he was the one who gave open to the vehicle's door, but with no intent on helping, rather eliminating through natural cause, for the small squirrel despised the race of humans. Although not with the allies of Sigajua, the squirrel had no intention of getting near an automobile to save. Rather, as the humans continued to plow through the forest, capturing creatures like him for their own stomach and decorations, he did see, however, the actionless event displayed by the spirits who brought her to safety, for their darting eyes caught his heart dead on. He was the one who, opened the door, but he was not the one who controlled the winds which guided Canada to safety from the car. He is not evil with Sigajua, but he despises the race of humans. Like, I'm throwing acorns at you. Haha. Yeah. I'm mad at you, human. For their darting eyes caught his heart dead on. The girl character had no thought to this view, and so Canada gave the small rodent a dirty look, eyebrows fully clenched, showing her great dislike for his actions. Like, why are you throwing acorns at me? But she would not go so far as to attempt murder and left the scene that part way. As the little creature scurried off, Canada observed many an acorn dropping from the small tattered sack upon his back. Those that fell were accidental compared to the purposeful one prior. Indeed, it was a strange occurrence within the Animalia kingdom, and Canada thought she could never forget this day in however many days she survived. Beginning descent, as the mother bear had, Canada carefully applied her palms to the skin-peeling bark of the tree, took one deep breath, then commenced the downward climb. Once at the bottom, she was surprised to find the mother bear in a somewhat hysterical laugh, hands grasping chest as if the funniest bird had just fell from the sky. It could only be assumed that the bear had witnessed the plunk upon her forehead, and the girl became somewhat red in the face as she recalled how silly the scene would seem to a bear. What could she do, however, for the squirrel seemed quite out of place within the average forest. A little sound then peeped from behind, produced directly from the same such squirrel who had before intimidated the angry heavens with his stunt. It was a very obnoxious, high-pitched laugh of a clown, and the very one threw himself down against the tree branch, still balancing, and held his tiny, tremendously fluffy tummy in expiration. Now even the squirrel's laughing. After observing the lead bear, whom she was following, could wave, a laughing squirrel worried her the least bit, and only umbrage toward the creature was shown. Dare it may make a fool of her? Sensing his qualified annoyance, the squirrel stood upward and hopped away, leaving the girl alone to her own. She turned back toward her newest acquaintances, the mother bear and cub, only to find them both closely contemplating the event. After first view witness, each began shaking their heads side to side with a dear look of disapproval. Although unsure of whom they disapproved of, her or the squirrel, Canada assumed the wrong impression was made. Once again, however, the bears forgot the incident and simply gave forth a head nudge to a new direction of luscious trees. I use my head. Ugh. The path she had taken upon her flee, close by the cave from before, seemed to have multiplied in population, with the most of the inner space crowded with relative bears. Each carried a woven basket, in which lay a resource of their choosing, whether it be fresh seeds, perfectly straight twigs, hand-picked berries, or the bark of various trees. The materials that interested Canada seemed to do no appearance to the mother or cub, for they instead walked around the cave, where a lavish slant of a hill, filled with luscious grasses and smooth floors, guided to an upper level. In this space, the mother and cub began to sniff about, sticking their nose into every nook and cranny growing upward, though for what Canada was not sure. They seemed to approve of what scents they received, and the mother gave a gentle but audible call downward toward their relatives below and all their supplies. Following her speech, the bears, in a rather single-file line, transversed upward and, like the human species, began to gruff together within a circle. It's a bear get-together. Around a table. And what do you know? bears have their amazing family reunions. Clovers and vines spread the area. They traveled long and long ways until reaching the hill's edge, where they drooped over the cave's surface. Perhaps the vines that covered the night before. Only now, though, the vines were brushed to the sides and held hostage by stone boulders at the ledge. Perhaps from the front, it appeared a hairstyle of hair pinned back toward the ears. The vines were longer than the girl expected, and more alive than the brittle vines she had previously assumed. Based on her times, only one conclusion could be formed. The mornings came time to open the curtains, letting the light glimmer within to warm the cave's walls. At night, the sheets would close, and while the warmth was trapped, also ensured a safe atmosphere for the sleuths, which is another word of bears. A cluster of bears is known as a sleuth. It almost sounds like a sloth. Bears are not sloths. Then the young bear raced over, demonstrating exactly the explanation of Canada, lifting a large rock. The vines are like curtains. They open during the day and they're closed during the night. The young bear raced over, demonstrating exactly the explanation of Canada. Lifting a large rock, the bear grasped the loose vines and pulled back, pinning them down with the structure. It was quite really an interesting process, as she observed, and perhaps fun, as afterward, the cub commenced a circus of cartwheels down the slope. His fur shook about madly, and his balance was off, but he had the most necessary attainment needed to life, being that. So, ending with the bear's form of jazz paws, the young bear was able to capture the girl's deliberation. With the young one, but the little one was not quite finished yet, for he began to run, hide, leap, all the while returning close by from the far gone, perhaps in want for a chase. Canada seemed pleased at the idea. Before attempting anything, however, the girl took a quick look at the mother bear to see her approval. With knowledgeable eyes, the mother inscribed the "yes" rejoin. The chase was on.
Why, you didn't think we're gonna end there, no. Running was one of Canada's favorite things to do, and she enjoyed spending on this new moment. Safety was felt within the dense maze of pines and hugged against the kiss-dewed leaves. The air felt so fresh, like from a freezer, and the sun burnt, but in a heart-melting way. Heart-melting. In the space, she no longer felt an immigrant, but rather a neighbor from a visiting kingdom. Imagine being like a city person going to the forest area. You feel like a flowy river was coming up. The girl braced herself for the large jump, the toe of her shoe digging far into the loose, moist soils below. In the air, she felt a ballerina, one foot in front, the other behind. She would fly forever. Only one fact prevented her motion, that being of a monstrous sting that arose from her inner organ. Had she caught fire? Perhaps swallowing a poisonous insect in midair? Her mouth had laid open during the time, unfortunately. When she jumped, her mouth was like, a bug could have entered. It was more than a reaction to venom. She realized that she steadily planted her 2 feet and clasped her stomach, cause was more natural than first expected, being that huge gurgle. When had she last eaten? Perhaps the day before, the day after her birthday celebration? During lunchtime at noon? It was enough to satisfy the time, but almost a full day had passed since then. It was enough to satisfy the time, but almost the first day had passed since then. By then it was mid-afternoon, and her stomach craved nourriture with the bite of a lion. How she was filled amongst immense brushery, yet still felt unsure of the edible factors, caused the girl some distraught. Her body was already in starvation mode. Only now, as she no longer felt threatened, did the feeling truly come forth. Only if she proved to be filled would the laws of nature cease to prevail, something the girl would work for. Perhaps her dear bear friend would guide her eyes toward a plentiful meadow of berries or walnuts. Grrr! It demanded to eat her inner organs. Her stomach was a rat trying to rip itself from a closed pouch, but Canada knew the acids lining her stomach would never dare to completely devour her, for it would only remove her means of functioning as a human. Another sound produced, this one large enough for the distant bear, still playful to hear, and he quickly raced back, an expression of worry crossing his face. He was quite observant and immediately recognized the nagging problem nagging. Quickly, he raced his way over, slightly disappointed but concerned, and stopped before the girl's very legs. From there, his solution was to hold and pull, in which he did, grasping Canada's right calf and forcibly yanking forward. Both only lost their balances. He grabbed her ankle and started yanking. Now I'm thinking that would hurt, like if a bear wrapped his claws around your ankle and pulled the claws. Like if a cat did that, that would hurt. Imagine if a bear does that. Those are giant claws. I mean, of course, that would be more surface area, so it wouldn't scratch as deep, but it would scratch a larger surface. So it'd be like a big old shark tooth around your ankle. Whoa, little one, relax. I'll follow you if you have a place in mind, Canada stated upon getting herself up from the unbalanced fall. The cub seemed satisfied and comprehensive of her statement and quickly ended his failed attempts. He gave her a curious look, stretched out a paw, and allowed the girl to bend over and hold it. Then, at a run, the bear raced away, the girl on his heels. Sometimes I wonder why our hair grows this way. Do you think humans will evolve to genetically have hair that's all the same length? Like, little hairs will distract you. That's a threat to survival. You're trying to cross the road, and you're like, oh, there's a hair in front of my face. Run over by a car. But then over time, we will all grow to have equal length hair. No little filleting ends. The cub seemed satisfied and comprehensive of her statement and quickly ended his failed attempts. He gave her a curious look, stretched out a paw, and allowed the girl to bend over to hold it. Then, at a run, the bear raced away, the girl on his heels. They traveled the direction of the cave, crossing over the stream and amongst towering pines. Upon their arrival, the mother bear, being quite observant, sensed the girl's hunger. Calling them over with a groaning sound, she led them to a circular rock table. Any craftsman would envy the rounded corners, leveled surface, and textured appearance the true granite block had. Bears in nature are much better creators, sculptors than any sort of craftsmen. Its mass, however, was difficult to determine. If it was a hunk, how had the mother bear gotten it there so quickly? The rock wasn't there earlier. Yeah. Canada's thoughts shifted back toward the present as a giant green leaf, edges fringe, was presented upon the table. Purpose of a tablecloth, she suspected. Upon this, the bears from below placed their baskets, each one set down with the accomplishment of an Olympic medal. The bears then moved aside from the large space and created a circular formation around the hilltop. There may have been 30 beings total, aside from herself. The thought did confuse her for a moment, as she had always been told of a bear's preference for a solitary life, perhaps only with another for a short period in time. Was it some sort of species reunion, or was this their way of common living? The girl did not think much of it, though, as her eyes scanned the insides of the baskets. Food. Food. A supermarket's produce aisle had been presented before her there. She would waste no time at it and cure the dog she had growling inside. Once in eagle's eye view of the table, her mission of conquest began, and Canada reached her hand forward at the sight of a rather plump strawberry basket. Although filled to the brim with the similar species, the girl's hand seemed to lunge of its own accord for a rather plump specimen. It was medium-sized, the lightest red of the rainbow, with dollops of oval tan seeds and a strong green stem lodged through the roof. Broadcast, it could easily camouflage itself in two. However, its nutrition caused the climax over appearance, and only inches lay between her hands and their moist and firm surface. But with a swipe of a paw, the girl's hand was banned from any part of the table. The rich little hand picking at something. It was a bear who did the hi-ya. But with the swipe of a paw, the girl's hand was banned from any part of the table. It was a little cub who gave this prevention to the table of treasures. While it seemed rather hostile and selfish, the bear was simply following the commandments of his bear tribe, meaning no harm but to force respect onto the newcomer. To assure her of this, the bear next commenced a kind gesture, a small nudge under the shocked girl's arm, which lay hanging limp at her side, still blessed with shock. Slowly, he led her to a sturdy log seat, which was one of many that had been placed about the large rock, and effectively Christianed its base for the girl. Looking rather pleased to seat the guest himself. The girl sat, but while she kept patient, her mind only filled with the thought of missing out on the delicacy before her. It was as if she had found a filled shopping cart in the middle of the store, filled with exactly what she needed, but then for all its items to be quickly restocked before her two dismayed eyes. It was rather surprising, the wait rather than long. The coming began with grunts and snorts from all directions, noises only produced by bear. Indeed it was. In the large amounts of bear she was able to in the distance outnumbered the ones lining the hill's edge, the ones who brought the baskets of resources. They seemed to be coming from everywhere. About the trees came a head, then a body. In the horizon, far beyond the cave they stood upon, 6 or 7 black dots could be spotted. Oh, like a landscape painted by artist Vincent van Gogh that was placed under the child's supervision. Hopping across the rivers were bear ballerinas, but with the grace of the large creatures they were, they roamed like an invasive species of insect spreading through the land. Where'd my bookmark go? I just flung it. My precious. And it's for sale, $1,000. Frame this, and it is the museum paper. Yeah. They roamed like an invasive species of insects spreading through the land, or perhaps more like the angels of heaven, swiftly gliding above the dirt patches below like a paintbrush. Yet seemingly clumped, there appeared to be some kind of organization between them as each hung about their special pack, their family. It only made Canada wonder if nature was closer to human ideals than she had previously considered. But their presence brought a rather wonderful, beautiful sensation of a home, one that she had been openly brought into. A part of Canada felt welcomed into her own primitive animal existence. Homo sapiens gathered plants, used their hands for resources, and existed closer together. She was lucky the old, fashionable way of nature was still plentiful, for it provided more color than any could know. The most enduring survive amongst the mass, but the one being who could swipe out the entire planet, humans, could only do so if their eyes scanned past these yellows, blues, and purples. As the girl felt the gushing breeze and the silent footsteps of family, she quickly thanked the time frame she was born into, hoping it to thrive like a sequoia tree. Sometimes I wonder, looking at a book, it's easier for me to read with one eye than both. And I wonder if that's because, when our eyes are open, we're basically, it's made for, it's basically like seeing distance. These two frames overlapping. But if you're looking at a book, you don't need two images because there's this one flat thing. Because that just takes more to focus two images than focus only one. Especially if that one image has no depth. Hoping it to thrive like a sequoia tree. Zooming back to the table, Canada decided to keep her manners, sitting quietly as each bear took its place among the rounded table. Little ones clumsily tripped. Elders were assisted, and the strong stood beside their forgotten chairs. And someone is so bulky with strength that they can't really sit in their chair because they might break it or they don't even fit in it. A sudden clasp of 2 paws from each bear caught the attention of Canada. Harmony washed over the crowd's rumbles and grunts, and everyone's eyes swayed upwards. They just all clasped hands. How lovely. This is a random bear religion of something that they're some holy bear spirit. Then a sudden clasp of 2 paws from each bear caught the attention of Canada. Harmony washed over the crowd's rumbles and grunts, and everyone's eyes swayed upward. From only the mother bears came a sound. Though unknown to the girl, it appeared widely known to the rest there, and after only a few verses, the rest chanted along with similar rhythm. The girl could only assume that the ceremony was held frequently, or perhaps the relative bears had telekinesis toward the mother bear. Whatever the way, the phrase constructed by all the bears in harmony from direct resource of Canada's mind are as such. After, a last sound was produced, solitary by the mother bear. Grrr. Silence, other than the gentle chirping of birds, then commenced. The amount of confusion these phrases caused Canada was implausible, but nonetheless imaginable, considering us humans would only hear such the vibrations of vocal cords, but not comprehend such syllables. This type of ritual, however, piqued the curiosity of the young, inexperienced Canada, whoever only sighted humans giving thanks to life. Elementally, the human brain is thought as the most powerful substance, only it occurring to express gratitude. Everything the girl witnessed had strongly challenged this belief. Supplementary battle to the dictionaries began when the young cub looked up to the sky, opening his mouth in wonder, as if drooling for the comfort of a being above. His mind was the same as any religious could, even though young as he was. Actually, I did write part of the story in 6th grade. The grade when in social studies you're learning all about the religions. So, yeah, I'm not much of a history enthusiastic person, but that was part of my brain because I had to learn it. And so that stuff is forcefully put into your mind. The things that are around us, they make up who we are in our mind. Information literally makes you up. So why not create your own information, your own stories? Because that's your inner information. It's not information that's put into you. This information you've created shows you yourself. Canada's family was unreligious, celebrating not Christmas nor Easter, and the girl had never had religious influence in her life, not through school, activities, or events. Yet the girl understood the feat. Bibles and Qurans previously read told her that somewhere above a divine power resided above the norms of human culture. His purpose as creator to watch over his pedestrians. He remained unseen to all, even as you search for his approval and strength. Did this reality really bring the creation of life? Perhaps, or the other, but what more interested Canada was that the bears, too, made time to pray, and not just the exquisite human brain. Near the time, are these bears worshipping for the Buddha, a Christ, a Muhammuda? Canada finally questioned after eyes opened and paws separated. The girl had been in deep thought, listing just about every religion she could recall from her prized book, The Influential History of World Religions. It can bring shock, for the entire book contained more knowledge of the topic than any grown humans would ever acquire in their full life cycle. Books carry more information than one human really needs in their life. Why preserve things for such a long time? I mean, it helps you understand things, why things are, but makes the past seem more important than the present for the future. With all religions in mind, Canada remained stumped as she sat on her stump. Of course, a human would give gratitude to a certain something. For the bears, perhaps, there was not a divine thing, for nature is secluded from these human philosophers, prophets. A bear would have nothing to thank but what is not man-made, but rather an ideal or uncountable substance in respect. It was the most peaceful, graceful, natural planet of soil and water that tended comfort. This planet, though through human knowledge, perhaps considered Mother Nature, bestowed the stretching of islands, flowing waters, blossoming shrubs to its inhabitants. Given the limitations, it could be her only guess. So she's guessing they're praying to some sort of Mother Nature. I'm gonna say it's Ghost Bear. They're praying to Ghost Bear. It's their ancient ancestor. A quiet moan from the mother silenced any rumbles, and the mother commenced to retrieve her favorite parts of the feast, taking the uppermost berry and crunchiest roots. The speed at which she moved was astonishing, and after only a minute, she gave another grunt that seemed to signal for the young generation's fill. Their plates topped with pecans and fresh leaves. Forwards, especially unexpected it came for Canada, to be given a wide and sturdy granite bowl, easily fitting the space within her two palms. She was next in line, it seemed, to pick from the delicacies, perhaps due to her guest's status. Blah, blah, blah. During this, however, an older bear, a far distance from the bowl exchangers, decided to lean forward and quickly give a sniff to the closest basket in front of him, overstocked with green, flourishing kale leaves. Only a slight glance was needed for the mother, the leader of the group, to see all. It sent her into a booming state, and from her mouth was produced a sound unlike any Canada ever expected a bear to produce. It radiated throughout the wide open grass space and far into the woods. But it ended as quickly as it had begun, however, it It sounded long enough to not just frighten the elder, who slumped away from the kale leaf, but the entire sleuth of bears, a quietness washing over the group. Canada, too, got rather startled, and the only sound produced ended up being the granite bowl as it smashed to the rocky ground. No matter how hard the hit, it did not shatter. It was a sturdy granite bowl. What is that, an igneous rock? We love granite-made bowls. Although angry at the elder, the mother seemed genuinely sorry for startling the young girl and took the task of retrieving the bowl herself. Mother faced Canada, giving a look that Canada would only assume meant, "You are our guest. This is your home as long as you are here. None shall give harm to thee." The mother bear was just like, "Rah!" at the old bear who was trying to steal some kale leaves, and then he was like, "Yes, girl. Welcome, human girl. You are our guest. I know I may have screamed, but you don't have to fear me. I'm just a bear." Blah, 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 blah. The face of tension she had loosened, and Canada let the thought words sink deep. Her allowance was to fill the special bowl of the menu, and that she did. As the reality of the empty space left, Canada observed the huckleberries, blueberries, pine nuts, and plenty of root types that piled her plate. She skipped upon the slate insects and fish, though, for she was uncertain toward their sanitation and amounts of bacteria. I guess bears have evolved to sort of withstand any bacteria from raw stuff. They got roughness, they're gruff. Only with hope, Canada permitted herself to accept the plants she failed to recognize and pile them on too. She observed the others who had begun eating the various plants. If the bears were well approved of their safety, perhaps she would not the need for a laid-out shopping cart. Yeah, the plants. He's like, if the bears are eating these plants, I suppose they're safe. For a laid-out, because not about bacteria, but about poisonous, like a poisonous berry. The same food can taste different based on its manufacture, whether it be a tree, farmer, or a machine. As the girl's tongue touched the delicacies, a clink message was sent from her buds to her brain, describing juicier and sweeter tangs than ever tasted before. Mother Nature grew nurtured differently, and the freshest seemed to catch the bear's attention. Could nature be any more beautiful than the shape of a leaf? All throughout the while of daydreaming, Canada had much slowly, paying not attention to the creatures around her. However, if she had, she would have beholden the direct faces of a patient but quickly eating family for their guests. Her watch clicked for an hour, and the girl's eyes perked up. The secret was soon discovered, and it gave her a most benumbed face as her realization kicked that, rather quickly, every bear had licked clean their stone bowl. Figuring such a bear's mouth had greater carrying capacity, the girl continued without a rush. Only when she finished did the youngster deliver himself to work, piling the multiple plates atop his nose and head and body and tail, all together. An act of balance and skill, and headed down the hill's top toward a river below. Within it, fine crystal water flowed. It could have very well been considered the liquid form of diamonds, or holy water, in Canada's greatest opinion. River, what a beautiful river. But Canada noticed her young bear friend in struggle, and wished to give assistance, like any good friend would do. The mother, however, used only a paw to prevent her movement, and turning back, Canada observed the bear shake its head. Canada was not sure she understood. Perhaps the dishes were the cub's chore, and that his duty was to perform it solitarily. Brain soon left the topic as the cloud puffs ahead began to part ways, and the late morning dawned upon the dewed grounds. Attention was briskly turned from bear responsibilities to the flowing, distilling crystal liquid. It probably gifted a nice breeze to nearby settlers. From the observation, 3 benefits emerged. Firstly, it provided a pristine source to clean the granite dish her meal had been placed on, which she gave thanks for. Second, thirst would never come to bother her with such the flow. And thirdly, as the bright, do you know about me? My special gift that I can't do this with this hand. I just can't. I don't know why. I have some weird muscle in my finger. I can pull it back, but it didn't just go forward. Why? What is wrong with this hand? I don't know. Why do you do this, finger? Like, why? I can crack my knuckle. Ha! Still doesn't work. I was on 30, that's what I was. And thirdly, as the bright light rays of the morning sun absorbed into her outer glands and pores, twirling across her forehead and nose came beads of sweat, the feel of tiny ladybugs crawling across her eyebrows. Isn't that how sweat feels? So itchy. It was utterly discomforting, even for the girl who loved insects herself. She advanced downwards, this time met with no preventions. Perhaps the mother decided one warning was enough and figured the girl had intention to do something else at the water's edge. Which she did. Where land met water, Canada knelt down and slowly dipped her hands into the warm pool, feeling the bubbles tingle against her fingers. Splashing up a double handful, Canada let her mask take to the fresh molecules as they washed away any amount of tiny, uncomfortable legs. The fake insects. She was invigorated once more. Up close and without distraction, the shallow stream was even more reflecting, clearer than she expected. However, no life seemed to thrive in its ripples. The bottom lay covered with what seemed a flat jigsaw puzzle of rock. Although rather structured, the question came as to where the life permitted itself. Would you like to see my non-existent eyeball? Blah. However, no life seemed to thrive in its ripples, and the bottom lay covered with what seemed a flat jigsaw puzzle of rock. Although rather structured, the question came as to where the life permitted itself, if not in or near water. The girl, too, realized that during the trip whole of her journey, only birds, bears, and a single squirrel had been encountered. The snakes, too, although only in vision. Perhaps the man, if you consider him an animal. But insects, rodents, and water dwellers came in the negative. Was this simply not part of the woods for them? Or had something caused the usual overabundance of these species to diminish? Again, her mind was turned away, this occurrence being by the youngster who, nearby, had completed his dishwashing duty. A stack of nice stone plates laid to dry along the water's edge. They were aligned as children watching the water's edge for activity, like she had been. The bear appeared ready for induced excitement to give seed in his heart. With a large hopper across the body of water, he took off in a torpedo sprint toward the deep thickest of green beyond. Every now and then, the bear peeked backwards in hopes of completing their chase. Canada glanced at the mother bear, if only content if she allowed a human to chase her child. With a nod of approval, playtime could begin, and Canada commenced her love of running once again. This time unsuspecting of the faraway distance the journey would transport to. Finally. That's chapter 3 up. We have chapter 3. Guess how many chapters there are. I think there's like 15. I'm going to learn anything. You're going to like my book, and you're going to like it more than anything. I just wrote my story. It's my story. Just like this is my nose. That's my book. That's my nose. Okay, see you in the clouds. There's a bunch of bears. Apparently bears are like humanish, pedestrian-like Tokyo traffic cone. If everything is road-based, road sign-based, then thus people are pedestrians. It just makes sense. He's a creepy. I imagine him to be like a funny, but he's also evilish, like a gargamel. To him, which makes him a likable villain. See in the clouds. Hear me out. Ooh.